Let me know if you want to let you share screen. If you want to, do you want to use the screen, Daniel? There you go.
My screen. Oh, then I have to open the text.
Oh, do you want me to pull up the text?
Can you pull it up?
Yeah,
that
I
would
can.
be perfect.
Let me just get a hold of it.
So for today's Philosophical Fellowship, we will read a passage from Plotinus's Enneads. That's on page 887 in this edition by Lloyd P. Gerson. If you want to read it. The biggest puzzle arising is that comprehension of the one is neither by scientific understanding nor by intellection, as it is in the case of other intelligibles. It corresponds rather to a presence which is better than scientific understanding. But the soul undergoes a departure from its unity and the fact that it is not altogether a unity whenever it attains scientific understanding. For scientific understanding involves an account, and an account is multiple. The soul then passes by the one when it falls into number and multiplicity. So it should run above scientific understanding and in no way exit from its unity, and should depart from scientific understanding and the objects of scientific understanding. Indeed, all else, even from the vision of beauty. For everything beautiful is posterior to the one and comes from it, just as all daylight comes from the sun. For this reason, Plato says it is neither to be spoken nor written of. We do speak and write of it by way of directing others towards it, waking them up from discursive accounts to actual looking, as though we were showing the way to those wanting to see something. For teaching extends only to the road and the route, while looking is the work of those already wanting to see. If someone does not attain the sight itself, then the soul does not come to have comprehension of the splendor in the intelligible world. It does not undergo and then have the sort of erotic state of a lover, seeing the beloved and coming to rest in that, because he receives the true light and has his whole soul illuminated through the great proximity to the one, even if he is held back on the ascent by a weight pulling him backwards, which is an impediment to the vision. He does not ascend alone, but takes with him something which separates him from the one, or is not entirely collected together into a unity. The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is the power in themselves akin to what comes from it. When one is in the state one was in when one came from the one, at that moment one can see, insofar as the one is such as to be seen. If then one is not yet in the intelligible world, but is still outside, either on account of these things or because of a lack of educational argument, which inculcates belief about the one, then one must take the responsibility on oneself, and one should try to depart from all things and be alone. So I found this passage in a book from Joanne Stamball. You might know her because she translated a lot of the Heidegger works. And she thinks that this particular passage might be one that describes best how the experience of becoming something or becoming even a principle. So that's the one in that case. And kind of like how that works. And we can only know it by becoming it. That's this deep coupling of us and the one, this deep participation between us and the one, and how we kind of like have to let go at first of scientific accounts so we can ascend towards the one, come closer to it. So I would like to now go into the precious speaking, and I would like to do the side number 25. So the one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. So that one sentence, until akin to what comes from it.
So just this part, the one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything.
And yeah, until footnote 47.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. This whole passage. Okay.
This whole sentence, yes.
I'll go ahead and leave this up here then, so we can make it a little bigger. So I guess
I will start. Shall I start? And then so on my screen it would be Guy, then Javier, then Seth, then Thomas, and then Leonard. The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it and in a way grasp it and touch it through the likeness to it. That is the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves, akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it, and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves, akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves, akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it, that is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
We'll go another round. The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is, the power in themselves akin to what comes from it.
So now we're going to go into what's called precious speaking. And just to presence the context of it again is in precious speaking, through our speaking, our intention is to evoke, invoke, and provoke what is said and of Plotinus himself. We seek to, in our speaking, is to make present to, in service of internalizing the sage, in some sense, speaking from the sage, in this case, Plotinus. And then we'll go in order. So we'll just go in the same order. So we'll start with Daniel, and then with me, and in the same order that we read.
I'm now kind of trying to listen to this likeness in me, but also in you, that might come from the one.
I feel given and taken away at once.
This receiving and preparation to the likeness is almost of the same essence.
Even though all I want is to prepare myself for receiving it, I also know that part of receiving is letting go of it.
I kept trying to let go of this image of being. I sensed as if I was being umbilically connected to a cord that I could never get to the end of. But there's a sense of connection. But I know it's beyond the image, and I even wanted to let go of that image. But being that image was one of a connection, I let that be.
Kind of feel like this, yeah, letting be or letting go, kind of, it's kind of that, we kind of, it feels like we are like common, or like in this like group now, like, kind of drawn to this like countenance of this, presence, so that it is so like always so fragile and sensible, and yeah, it's kind of so this letting go or letting be is kind of yeah, first allowing for this kind of countenance, I would say.
what is kind of like that which holds us in that continent that Leonard just brought up? What is that that holds me, which is absent from nothing and from everything?
I feel evoked into anonymity by being undressed.
The feeling of receiving and preparation is to, I get the sense, is this creative letting go and creative participation, is to be in this activity. And to be akin to what it is saying.
It's like hmm. It's like doing this. It is like being naked, but not in a vulnerable sense per se, but more like when you're a child, just naked and having the breeze blow on you.
I feel very close to the embodied humanity of Plotinus as a fellow human being, but I feel distant from, or a novice, or as a novice in relation to his spiritual maturity.
Yeah, I mean, this right, this spiritual maturity is also like something like that Thomas just mentioned, is something that kind of, you know, speaks to me like through our reading of Plotinus. So it's kind of that, yeah, you know, just looking at my desk and all this technical stuff there, or like this stuff laying around, you know, it's in kind of what like brings them together here on my desk, and it's like, and not just make them stuff, but yeah, brings them like, you know, personhood, and brings this in this situation, like being and sharing like the thought, and like kind of evoking Plotinus sage, trying to do it, and like think through this text, like, and come closer in a way to what he might thought. I feel this kind of, yeah, it's really good fitting, like it's spiritual maturity, like in a way, like following this and trying to attempt it.
When you two were just speaking, kind of like I had this image of the old Plotinus, kind of like taking you by the hand, like as if you were a little child, right? And kind of like just guiding you towards this illumination, the one that when you close your eyes, that you kind of like, and you really listen and look, that you kind of like you see this flashing of this like, it's like the light of the sun. It's very warm and blissful, but kind of like Plotinus helps us so we can look towards that light that we often forget to see.
Oh, one, stop it again. Stop it some more.
I get this feeling in the text, even though maybe I don't understand, but there is this very crucial like sensitivity, and it's so sensitive, it's like every movement is a ripple. And I really felt that when I got out of the meditation and with the chanting. It's like one places the cup and I felt the whole ripple. And you can really feel how sensitive it is, how we form the one and the one forms us. And there's just these series of ripples going on. And all I want to do is just lift my finger off and let it, and to see it as it is, just for one moment. Just for one moment, I want that.
And if Plotinus was able to receive the one, and he's still with us, holding our hands, showing us to the one, then maybe that tells us something about what the one is.
I mentioned the umbilical, a child in relationship to this kind of spiritual practice. So I suppose just where I stand right now is I would love to receive his hand, and I would love for his hand to receive mine. And I suppose that's where I'm at in today's practice of the contemplation of the sage as Plotinus. Just right there, maybe.
Kind of like what comes up in me is like as Seth said, like to in a way I think, you know, what I think is that we kind of we may get nearer to, or like we are kind of moving in a sense toward like to what it is, and then in the same way, right, it's like Evil Digger now once or sometimes says, it's like what it's nothing. it's just nothing. It's and it's especially like in this, like, this this movement, or like this this activeness of thought. It's kind of there's, it's that which envelops kind of, I feel, our, like, in this way, our, like, shared thinking, like from different parts of of the world, but it's like oriented toward like what speaks through the text to us, and in a sense, this kind of the also this, it's kind of the serenity and also the saintliness, in a sense, to it, like this enveloping of the thoughts moving and being guided, directed, oriented, and like moving, towards and around around kind of the one.
Let's go a couple more rounds, and we'll open up to the next.
So the image that is coming now to my mind is kind of like the umbilical cord that Thomas evoked. And I don't know if you kind of like, but where it is in your case, I mean, I guess it's in the stomach, but then I'm trying to kind of like now just following the sensation into the stomach, kind of like where it leads me and what it tells me. And I kind of like feel kind of like slight tension. Now I'm letting go. Then I really feel a relaxation that perhaps might point to something that is beyond that mere sensation.
There's something about, as someone mentioned, delicacy of this, and yet at the same time, more like it reveals myself as the one that's delicate, but the it, right, is something other than just delicate, yet and this quality of sensing, as I was reading it, like sensing a kind of some concern, almost like a concern, right? And it, like before it could become a worry or something that I could grasp or something, the next sentence like undid it and revealed that, oh, you already the thing that you're concerned about, right? It just kept doing that. And then, and through this kind of doing, undoing, revealing reversal, sense of care, something else happened that remained through it, right? And it's like the very movement itself anticipated the concern in which it was its own address. But that sense of quality of this very kind of revealing, like this display, revealing myself as the fundamental awkwardness I am, right? Yet it being addressed and accommodated for, and something like that. Yeah. Very loving, but brutal.
Yeah, I was obsessed with the idea of being present without being present and everything. I thought about this kind of like fragrance, this kind of like perfume. And I feel like Plotinus would have had this same fragrance and would have said very little to me because he's already showing me with this fragrance. And to see a smell that is, you almost have to be so refined and so prepared to be able to receive something like that. To the point you become the fragrance. And that's what I took from that passage, this just overwhelmingly beautiful fragrance that I have yet to have.
So I've been feeling into my stomach and trying to listen to what it's saying. And it made just listening to you all and in our attempt to invoke Plotinus, and as Thomas said earlier, just to be humble about and try to learn from a spiritual master. How when I first read this alone, I didn't catch it at all, like none of the passage. And now that we're savoring it, it just makes me realize more of my awkwardness, but also how there's something about how like it's always been that way, and yet that we can actually like listen at all to it, and how there's just something there. It's encouraging.
Hmm.
I'm not religious in any traditional sense, or a practicing Christian or anything. But there is this one line in the Gospel of John that in our last going through, it's just kind of been, because I think it really exemplifies the nature of how different of a way the sage inhabits the world, as opposed to, or not as opposed to, but how different their inhabiting of the world is exemplified even in their silence. But the line is just, I suppose there's two lines, but there's just something like, God sent not his son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. And when I read that, and when I hear that, there's something about the sage's ability to exemplify just a lived relationality to being, and by their exemplification, and by our, let's say, to even take the example of Jesus, our following him, or our receiving the hand of Plotinus, we then can begin upon that endeavor of entering into the way the world is for them, and in entering into the way the world is for them. It's like it's like I'm empty.
Exactly.
And now I feel hot and tingly. Right. Sorry, Leonard. But then it's like, if we do that, then the example of that, I think as Seth just said, the world that they inhabit is here all along, even in our ignorance of it. So just to take the Christian example, to enter through them, to enter with them, the kingdom was here the whole time. And they're the ones that inhabit that. And they're the ones, if we enter in relationship to that, it's like then we can begin to inhabit that as well. But like we already kind of said, I feel like an infant on this this practicing. I'm done.
What I kind of hear from this, what was just said, is kind of this. It's how do I describe it? It's in a sense like a settling and founding in like let's say, yeah, like a deep coming together with like kind of conversating, or like giving myself, emptying myself to a silence, and but that is, that is the silence that exactly is what kind of allowed me in the first place to listen and to be, to be with my whole body, to be corporally attentive to to what is like, granting and spending, giving me my kind of like life impulse, and in that sense it's a settling with this, at least that's what I hear from it. So, and yeah, I kind of really can relate to that.
I was especially, I was like holding my hands all the time on my stomach, just perceiving what happens. And I now feel this care that Guy evoked. I feel a certain pregnancy that is not just in my stomach, but kind of like seems to hold my whole being in the world. It's kind of like deep countenance where you that's what Javier said, right? You become, in a sense, the world. You deeply anchor yourself in that settling, that kind of like. And now, just now that the image comes, I'm sitting down with the Plotinus, the sage, and of course Jesus is also there because Thomas mentioned Jesus, and we are we are sitting on the like in the grass in a kind of lotus position, and just gently looking at the light of the sun, and just enjoying it without any afterthoughts or anything else.
I keep noticing there's something about right now that everything that I notice has this quality of generosity to it. And I was noticing it as the affinity for all of you as you were talking. And I was noticing it in this kind of strange, it's like something, there's something ticklish about it, like tickling, in the tickling in the sense that it tickle is kind of I always thought being tickled and the phenomena of tickling, it's this strange place. It's like on one level it's pleasurable, but yet it's not pleasurable, right? It's this kind of odd opening. There's something tickling about the way things are present right now. And that feels to me something like the goodness. It's like I know it's what it is. I notice the goodness, and then I notice this hand that wants to go grab onto the goodness, and then it just kind of laughs at itself and it falls away, or something like that. And there's the tickle.
You know, when Guy said the reversal concept, one line that it just hit me when everybody was talking was, I guess you could say I had that kind of similar tickle, where I asked the question, how does a sun ray get back to the sun? And I almost feel like that is that interesting reversal and that interesting awkwardness, that to realize that we are a sun ray, and yet we're asking this question of how do I get back to the sun? We are the very emanation of it. We are the sun. It's this crazy feeling to even ask that question. And I guess I can understand why it's so awkward and so delicate, is because you are this emanation. It is awkward. I mean, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and being this emanation and this notion of the dual aspect of being tickled, it reminds me of how Plotinus on the surface is disparaging of the body, but it seems deeper than that. And this tickling idea gets at it, where like whenever I was a kid being tickled, there's a part of you that doesn't like it, but a part of you still wants to play along and play a part in it. And I guess that's sort of like the sufferings of our body. If you can play it right, then it's enough.
In listening to Javier and Seth just speak, I began to be involved in what I think would be like a Neoplatonic practice of ascending to the one, but ascending to it through this spiritual umbilical cord. But then I was imagining then myself as this, to use what Javier said, like this ray that is trying to go back to the sun, but this, as if this, like my participation could attempt to, in one sense, even like through this remembering by way of this umbilical cord being connected to this thing, going back through, but like as starlight, but at the thing at the end of the umbilical cord, I think at the moment could only be analogous to something like a black hole. And as the closer the starlight gets to the black hole, the more the starlight continue, and then it's just, there's this, and then slowly it just, and then it just like, there's something about, it's just like the one is then that just, it getting totally beyond any conception, any image, anything. It's just like I'm trying to get closer to that. That's it.
Yeah, so kind of this, being like, or like, yeah, let's say being, being light, the being of light, but also this being light. It's really, it's strange. I cannot. It's awkward. It's strange. It's like, when you're also, just think of it. It's like when you're touched by sunlight, and it's like it has this ticklish aspect to it. So if you think after it, it like you will you will find probably, like, in a sense, this emptiness, and yeah, so I really kind of, it feels that, Javi is like the like how he said it and how he expressed it, really hits something, or like envelops something of our, I have the feeling of our talk. So it's this sun ray, or sun, the sun ray bending back, like on the way back to to its star, in a sense, and it's like this moving toward the star that first makes up the apparition of the star, and but yeah, so this is really interesting.
When Javier was speaking, I kind of like had this little moment where I then kind of like imagined, I became heliotrope. That we read in Converse Alone with Delon, we read about the prayer of the heliotrope of Plotinus' student Porphyry. I just had this image that I kind of like, by becoming the heliotrope, I also came a little bit closer to the one. So I ascended a little bit towards the one, because now I can not just kind of like look at the light as if it were a scientific object, but I can soak the light in, and then also, right, this tingling, that's also right. Leonard also just said this so wonderfully, that when you look at the sun, you kind of like, everything tingles, your nose, kind of like you want to sneeze perhaps, and it's but at the same time, it's also kind of like warming you from the inside, and it goes everywhere into your body. And you just want to, right, as the heliotrope, you just want to kind of like look at it. You kind of like want to follow it because it's so precious.
So I just want to just take a second before we go into the intentional conversation. So I just want to read what we, and just hear it now after having evoked it in the way we just did. The one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is the power in themselves akin to what comes from it. And now we can open up into what they're calling intentional conversation. We may be blessed. Is it turning into dialogos? And this is where we can start to bring other things in and have it be more conversational, but still allowing the spirit of this, of presencing and being aware of what's presencing, including what is being present, right? Kind of staying attuned to that. So yesterday I actually ended up making a little video about it, but I had this strange kind of somewhat thought as I was meditating in the park, and it's something like a call, this sense of hearing a call or sound I couldn't quite hear, right? It was so distant, to no one. The call was a call to no one. And then I had this sense of like, well, what is it to hear a sound or to respond to a call to no one? In some sense, it seems that one must become the no one to hear it, right? And this kind of strange sense of, and I think that you can kind of hear this, the sage Plotinus is definitely evoking. You can hear him being a sage in it, right? And this quality of that, like this kind of quality that to be the kind of beings we are is to always be in response to something that is not entirely clear to us. And in this way, I think I've just come to a deeper and deeper appreciation of this way that, like, if you really listen to almost anybody and you listen with that in mind, and you just ask, like, what are they responding to, right? And you can start to hear it, and then I thought to myself, like, because I've had this other thought, right, about, because my wife is 5 months pregnant, and I've been a little bit tripping out about, like, well, what does that mean? Like, who is this being that apparently is going to be my son at some point, but where is he right now? Like, where, like, I'm getting pictures of him he's got a face, and I'm like, is he there? Like, and then I thought to the sense of like, oh, and then I thought, well, who is it to be no one, right? Hearing a call to someone. And I would imagine I felt it reverse, right? The sense of where, oh, on some level, I kind of got a sense of the no one he is, right? and in some way, like almost from out of the womb, hearing the world, right, with all of our concerns and a name awaiting him and all of these things, that in by some miracle, he hears the call to someone, right? And in some sense, there's that quality of, in order to hear it, right, he must become someone who could hear the call to someone. And it was just a really, yeah, this whole thing, I feel like I'm inside of something akin to this, living in it.
I've been doing this study on inspiration. Where does that come from, right? Where is it? You always get the sense that someone is talking to you, something you've been called upon. And I also found it interesting that inspiration is also the act of breathing in, right? So there's this breathing in action going on. But if we just breathe in air, if we take the etymology of what air used to mean, it used to mean spirit. So to be inspired is breathing in spirit, right? And then I traced down the etymology of God. And there's one that really struck me. It said, to evoke, to call upon. And I thought that this being called upon and then responding is to invoke and then call upon. It's having a dialect. And by responding to your inspiration, you already are conversing with the one. And I thought how ambiguous that was, but at the same time, it's like you are breathing it every day. It's right there. It's present without being present and everything. And I've been told to pursue this further. So I've just been really absorbing what really inspiration is and where it comes from.
Yeah, it's weird how in some sense it seems like your son guy is giving you an inspiration to be no one because you want him to be someone. And so there's like this weird, like you're trying to like talk to him even though he's not him yet. And so yeah, there's something to that. Like I think Plotinus would really jive with that. Um, it seems like his whole aspiration towards the one was to become no one again. But in a sense, like Javier brought up earlier, where the sun ray returns to the sun. And I guess what's so odd about that is like it makes sense and it doesn't make sense. Like, why did I leave just to go back? And I think that's why we're here, is to not only to go back I guess there was something during Plotinus's, towards the end of his life, he started writing on good and evil. And he said something along the lines of like, the good is so good that he even finds a use for evil. And so I just got an image like the one is always just spreading, whether we like it or not, but it seems appropriate to like it, or to be like it, you know? Mm.
Yeah. So what do you have the feeling? I mean, Seth, you said, so what is like what I kept in mind from it was this, why are we sent out, or like why are the sun why is the sunlight sent out? So kind of, it's it I feel like reading, I mean, only this short passage from Plotinus, and then in the translation, but it's like really that this, this, let's say this aspiration of dwelling, in the world, and in the sense of like really, also with new life being born, and then the passing away. It's like, it feels like, or what I think is, it's that it's this pouring into, pouring into the world, or like pouring into this relationality, and like what I did. So I mean, that's for me what so when it says here, I mean, of course I cannot say about the translation, but it says that it corresponds rather, so it corresponds rather to a presence which is better than scientific understanding, but the soul undergoes a departure from its unity, and the fact that it is not altogether unity whenever it attains scientific understanding. So that is for me, kind of like essential, I feel, because it's like, also this way of shedding light onto something. What is this shedding? So where does it come from? I mean, I really feel that kind of that this is a trait, in Plotinus to follow, that, or at least has something to do with it. So all this, pouring and shedding, and because this has something for me to do, and with this generosity, like a gift that, that in a sense, you don't, so you're not asked to like give something back, in a sense, but so it's a yeah, it's like a poured or shattered gift, in a sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but
A poured, I want to make sure I get that. A poured what? Gift?
it feels like a poured gift. So in a sense that it's like, I don't know how this is the right expression, but that it's like, from the one shattered into forms of the one. So that it, that there's this continuum, in a sense.
Feeling just the something's being evoked for me in this, and in Plotinus also, just historically, is this kind of unique place in philosophy, right? Of between, right? It's right at the border between, the Greek, like the Greek sensibility, right? And right before, I think during the time where you start to see, like, it's Rome is about to turn to Christianity. So it's in this particular time, right, that he's Plotinus somehow became necessary, right, to speak in this way. So there's a way of like this, and I'm not exactly sure how all this ties together, but I feel it kind of gathering in the conversation of that this real clear place where you can feel in him where there's almost no difference between understanding in the traditional philosophical sense and this kind of mystical sense of being that which you're understanding, becoming one with it, this kind of sense in which it's not just propositions, but it's one of the ways that you understand, right, is these propositions express something that you've become, right? So this kind of quality of becoming someone who could understand what Plotinus said by like engaging in the grappling and the reading and the thinking of Plotinus, one starts to hear Plotinus, and in some ways you sense that in understanding Plotinus, at the end of that sentence, you find yourself sitting next to Plotinus, of him looking at something, and you're just sitting there looking at the same thing, right? So in some sense, there's this quality of invoking, of initiation, of transformation about this. And what I'm hearing here is, I can hear it in the background, this sense of mentorship, right? Which is strikingly gone, like in our time, like this sense of mentorship, right? Which seems to be distinct from teaching. And I think that there's something about this kind of quality of, reading that. In some sense, it's a proposition, but it takes away all the propositions, and you have to kind of be transformed. You have to become what you read in some way, right? That sense of understanding and mentorship, right? So I'm just kind of sensing these things starting to gather in the dialogue here.
I haven't read any Plotinus, but there's just a lot today in our talking to one another. But then just in the past few months, there is this, and it's not like it's a new thought, but it becomes ever and ever more apparent to me. And then it even ties into the nature of the mentorship. Because it's like, I find that now, my understanding of my own being here is so different than what it was just even a few months ago. But it's like, even if I'm not too arrogant to say the one, or even just philosophy, but it's like I know, I'll say it like this, because I'm thinking about this still in like the context of Thales as the first philosopher. But it's like, there's something about that, and there's even like a Jungian idea. It's not that humans have ideas, but ideas have humans. It's like it's like philosophy lets us become philosophers. It's like there's this continual, like, as a human being, falling into the always already the case, and then speaking from there. And then as like a new human who just emerges into this, and someone like Plotinus and all of these mentors who have already lived in the past and lived their lives and inhabited their worlds and written their texts, I can be totally ignorant of that, but there's something about, there's this being the type of person who let's say, even by enacting skole, being a free human being, it's like being lets you fall into it. Being lets you be received by it. And then you're receiving how you received by it. But there's just this, like, there's this stumbling into the thing,
Yes.
but not that like I am the articulator of it.
Yeah.
But there's this, it's even like aletheia. It's just like, there's something about what you are with being and what being is with you. And then even just to use the example of Parmenides for a moment, it's like when he goes on that kind of mystical ascent, when he is present with the goddess says, "Welcome, O noble youth." So there's something already about his being the kind of person in order for being itself to open up the way that it opens. And then he just finds himself in that and then articulating from that position or standing. So it's just that movement is becoming ever more apparent to me, that it's like I'm never really the I fall into my realizing of things or something like that. In that it was always already there.
Yeah. Just want to highlight that letting that you spoke of. Something about being that lets me fall into it. But this kind of quality of fallenness, right? But coming to waking up under, like, understanding, right?
Yeah.
Out of it, this kind of sense of like the very thing that allows, it's like there is this quality, especially with the one, where it's like that thing with that when you start getting close to them, it starts to negate itself and spin around, and like this kind of whatever that quality is I think I'm learning or being tutored in the statement was Plotinus, that that's the point to like that's the beginning of something, when you start to get in these tautologies and one thing negates the other, that there's something really, really important there, right? To kind of stay there as long as you can. And I felt that in your speaking, and this double sense of being letting, right? To fall finding, right?
It lets you, there's something just really, I don't know how to say it, but it's something, it just, it it receives your ability to receive it. There's something, I don't even know how to say it.
Yeah.
I really don't know how to say it. But then even, and maybe, and I haven't read Plotinus, and this might be more Platonic than Neo-Plotinus, but it's just, there's something in that, and even Seth, you spoke to this before, I think it's just the goodness of the one, or the goodness of being, the thing that outlasts all the horror, the thing that is the giving and even lets horror like eclipse its goodness, but ultimately to have the faith to know that that will remain behind it all the time, all the more, because something, I'm at the limit of my comprehension on this, but yeah.
But what's fascinating is like what you're just saying, the one's doing right there is the thing we're saying we're trying to do too.
Yeah.
That's sort of like the idea, like to be like it. So it's allowing evil, it's allowing that, it's allowing itself to fall, I guess. Mm.
I was now reminded, Johannes is sometimes also doing the same move with his fingers when he talks about Agnes, right? This kind of like withdrawing, but at the same time disclosing. We're like just following that, and it's so funny because, right, And then you see that this moreness is ever withdrawing, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it feels that we are always kind of like in this clumsy position of being fallen,
Right.
in regards to that sacred moreness,
Right.
because it always withdraws. But that's at the same time kind of like affording us to aspire to it,
Yeah.
and to always disclose something more, something right, that it's inexhaustible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's also what came to my mind when Seth was talking. It's outshining the horror,
Yeah.
the absurdity, the trauma.
And at the same time, letting horror be, right? Being so open. It's like it's so open, it's so inexhaustible, it's so open that it's open, it's open enough to let it be confused, to be lied about, right? To be like deceived, deceptive. And I'm hearing in this, it's something like I'm hearing in this, wisdom is the strange sense in which wisdom always has this quality of like wisdom is the thing that you can't ever possess. So there's something that harkens, I think, to what we're talking about, right? Of like there's some respect about this kind of with wisdom. You can't ever you can't grab hold of it. You can't tie it down into propositions. The moment you do that, right, is the one who says that they're wise is the one that just admitted they weren't, right? This kind of quality, there's something about that. Wisdom seems to be an open, and folly. We can kind of feel the folliness, right around the corner with all of this. So yes, it tickles.
I was thinking about this, the falling and finding, and I thought, why? Well, what, why did that have to happen in the first place? Why is that a process? You know what I mean? Like, why? It's like there is something so purposeful in the falling and finding, because I completely imagine of, this was never necessary. I mean, it's possible, right, that this was never supposed to be necessary, yet it is. And like that's what's so absurd and so awkward and naked about it. It's like I have to fall and find, but it's like it's so strange because it's like that's what freedom is. This kind of mentorship, when you let the the, the disciple, the one being mentored, just make it open, make it so open that he has to find it himself back into where he started. And it's like that's the whole mentoring. The experience is the mentoring. And it's just it's so profound because like there is this sort of, sometimes you get this a little bit of like hatred about why wouldn't you tell me what I'm about to experience. There's kind of this anguish and anger about why would my mentor do this to me? But you're already in the openness, it's already happening. And it's like that's like a part of the process as well. So yeah.
It's almost something like the difference between maybe a teacher and a mentor is something like there's a sense of kind of dwelling with the mentor, right? You can imagine, like, and many times I would imagine the mentor as you're talking, oftentimes talking about the thing that you're being mentored in, but I would imagine the mentoring is the thing that's going on somehow in the background of that happens in that dwelling, right? That one walks away from the mentor, probably explicitly thinking he didn't learn anything, and then he goes back to his family, and his family notices this accent that he didn't have before, right? That he's right. Like it's kind of and what does that mean to dwell? Like to dwell with somebody. I think that has something to do with that. That there's an orientating light, if you will, that the mentor is always in response to and open to be struck by and attuned to and by, and like, and that there's something that the mentor can't actually teach it. I think that's what he said. I think Plotinus said somewhere in the when we did the reading in the beginning of like something about like the teacher can only in some sense point to the path, but it's only the person who's could point to where to look, but it's in the students wanting to see, right? That this kind of strange place where like I can point to you, I can. It's also this kind of quality with love too. Like I can love you with everything that I can, right? Like I can communicate to you in every imaginable way, right? But the one thing I can't give you is the experience of being loved by me, right? There is this kind of quality where it's like there's something about mentorship and dwelling, right? That it's like it's modal, like it's almost like the being kind of is the thing happening in the background. Yeah.
I think part of that background is the mentor's going through it still. The mentor is not like hasn't achieved wisdom. And so often what seems enigmatic about the mentor is that the mentor is actually listening to the enigmatic. And so, yeah.
Because wouldn't then the mentor's mentor would be being itself? And this is weird thing about Scholé and from Eva de Gennar. It's like in Scholé, it is only in freedom that we can find a stance in the world. So it's only in freedom where the philosopher, or it's only in freedom where you can even find yourself falling into the thing that others can't fall into. So there's something about that the thing that is closed can open and can receive you. But then it's even that funny thing about love, because we always say that we fall into love. So there's this thing about the sage where the sage's sage, or the sage's mentor would be being itself. And to know that being itself, by his enacting his indifference to being, or him enacting, or her, but for them to enact their freedom, they know that always already the case can always open to receive them, and they can speak from there. But then that pattern is something that is a part of being itself that they can always find themselves in. And that's why they have the kind of faith to let any horror pass and let any eclipse pass, and to always to remain, and then just that indifference to things, because they know that pattern is possible in the first place. And there's something about that pattern in being itself. And even the thing about love isn't just love and the falling into love and finding yourself in love.
I couldn't tell if you were giving birth in that moment or if you were midwifing.
Oh, I'm in pain, Guy. Yeah. I'm even reminded of a quote from, I think it was Horace, but it was something like, it was about when the world is collapsing and crumbling around him, the sage will remain indifferent when struck by its debris. There's something about that. And then just, I suppose all I want to say about that really just, that's the importance of that kind of practice then. Just,
Daniel, what are you noticing?
I think Leonard just wanted to say something, right?
Go
So he's
for it.
noticing Leonard. So Daniel's noticing that Leonard wants to say something.
Yeah, like one thing I kind of wanted to say to this, what Thomas just said, like kind of, and it relates to this aspect that Guy mentioned in the beginning of like something that, you know, this aspect of containing, and then because like, and then like talking about Scole and like mentorship, in a sense, also this, like, you know, that you, it's in freedom, I think, kind of paraphrasing Thomas now, but in freedom that you can find a hold, you know, and can hold yourself. So this is kind of, for me, this is kind of the, you know, the, at least the insight from kind of the last year, that I had, that, you know, in German we have this word, like, it's like Einfriedung. It's like, it's hard to translate, but it's like, you know, like allowing for a setting into, or like a you know,
It's like a sheltering in some sense.
Yeah, in a sense, exactly. And so therein I really, you know, I really see this kind of, that is for me kind of what is a trait of mentorship, to allow for this containing, and to show this possibility of you know, finding a hold, which kind of is allowed for by a, you know, this by a unifying principle, and so this is kind of, but the path, like, is right, so there can be many paths, so but to allow and to kind of give the way to this, but at the same time, you know, also this, and I think it's in the notion, or like in the like facets of the meaning of containing, also like this perhaps, I'm not an English, I don't have an English ear, as one can hear, so but this aspect of, like, you know, I mean, moderating is not truly the right word perhaps, but I don't know, but and this, like, here, at least in the translation, where it says, like, so to be harmonious with it, and in a way grasp it and touch it. So it's this in a way, you know, and so because and kind of what I see in this, and where I see, like, I mean, I'm also not like well read in Plotinus, but where I see him, you know, showing you as kind of a sage figure, and like this becoming principles, is that there is this showing, and at the same time, you know, this moderating aspect to it, which also, like Johannes sometimes said, right, like alluding to his, like, teachers, mentors, that with philosophy there's always this, you know, there's always this threat of like being burned, and so because this touching, and it's for me this in a way grasp it and touch it, because, like, right, perhaps you know this the ancient Greek I think myth, or story of Midas, right, and it's like that he's the king, he already has a lot of gold, right, but he loves his daughter, and then, like, this I think it's a satyr, Silenius got drunk and passed into, like, passed out in Midas' rose garden, and so when and kind of he has, like, this relation to Dionysus, like the god of wine and celebration, and right then it's somehow that when Midas, you know, or when Dionysus learns of Midas' kindness towards his friend, and then he kind of comes in contact with him, and Midas speaks out this wish that everything he will touch turns to gold, right? So, and what happens then, right, is kind of he touches his daughter, and he turns into like a gold statue, right? And this is the moment where he realizes, okay, so the power, like, and because like in the translation, it's also speaking of power, like, but it's also here the power in themselves, akin to what comes from it, and this is, it's a power, but a power moderated in a sense, or speaking out of the same origin as, it was the power of the one is a strange. It's a strange power. It's like it can be really power can be really deceiving in this, like the word power as we use it today can be really deceiving, I think, in this aspect. But this speaks for me for like a mentor, and also like reading Plotinus, the translation here.
Right. Striking about it, I kept thinking about in Karate Kid. Remember that movie, like where he's like sand the floor, right? Wax the, paint on, paint off, like where he just has the kid working, right? And the kid wants to learn karate, and his teacher just has him do all this housework. And finally he's like, fuck you, like all you want me to do is da-da-da-da. And he's like, and Miyagi-'s like, is this moment where he just like punches him. All of a sudden he's like, wax the, send on, send off. And it's this whole, he could kick, and the whole thing was happening through these chores that he was doing over and over and over again. The thing that I think that there's something here that's being evoked here as well, but it was somehow necessary, right? That he not know that that's what he was doing, right? That the repetition of the chores, right, that he was doing, it seemed to be, it was incredibly crucial that he not know that that's what was happening, right? For that to have meaning in the way that it did in the movie, right? So this kind of quality of not only that it's actually, concealment is important in this mentor-mentee relationship, right? Like something, it's in that sense, that's maybe a moment in which it shows its crucialness, right? And if we think about this, and this is definitely my experience, and because I've been teaching for 25 years, like I'm teaching something that I still don't fucking understand what it is. But it is, right? Like, so there's always this kind of weird like place where I'm just very aware of that. It's like in some sense, how I would put it is, circling is the thing that it actually is doing the teaching. Like even when it looks like I'm the one that knows everything or something like that, I'm just so aware of this other sense of, like, I guess the mother tongue, bringing it back to De Janeiro, the mother tongue of the mother tongue, the thing that lets you know that wasn't the right word, and this is the right word, that something or other that's constantly there doing the mentoring, and that there seems to be something necessary that it not be fully disclosed, right? Concealment. Especially if we're going to say something like being, right, is the mentor. Like, then we're talking about, like, then it becomes it seems like if that's the case, then most of it is undisclosed, right? It's concealed.
I just remember how, right, Seth said in the beginning, or somewhere in the middle, he said when he first looked at the page, he didn't get anything at all. And then, like, while we were reading and kind of like, right, presencing the text, evoking the text, provoking, few imaginations, a few nuances out of it, right? Something kind of like opened up a little bit, right? And then we kind of like, we had a leeway to go further into that inquiry, right? And so kind of like what I'm also seeing is this kind of like this double movement of freedom and necessity. And that's so cool, right? Dejanaro said this in his one talk. The first word of philosophical man was "re" in Parmenides, which is there is a need. For him, it's this ethical need. So kind of like the need that we respond to that which claims us. And then we are always kind of like thrown into that tension of freedom and necessity. Necessity because that which claims us allows and affords us freedom in the first place. But then we again have the necessity because we always have to respond to it. So when we were presenting the text, kind of like at one point, kind of like, right, I felt this opening up, this kind of like necessity, but freedom at the same time. Because, right, at some point, just when I sometimes just Seth smiling, right, in these little pauses when he didn't say anything, just a smile plops up. It's just how wonderful. And I could notice and savor it, or just Thomas, right? Or Javier and the inspiration, right? It's just it goes through you like the breath, right? How wonderful that is. So, but then, right, what we were doing is just following the logos with our invisible mentor, Plotinus. And that's what mentorship should be. And that's what, so to say, like a cultural critical thing, that's what you should do. In that's what we are doing. We should do that in university and in church, and because that's the practice, that just this following and then inquiring it and seeing what happens.
I couldn't help but think about the Heraclitus quote with the child playing with time and the father being the war of all things. I always imagine like the child is so immersed in his little toys that he doesn't really see that his father's there watching him. You know, there's just like there's always this moderation. And you could say probably the scary point for the child is when he's so immersed in his play that he forgets his father there until suddenly he like realizes and he looks around and he doesn't see his father there and he starts panicking, you know, and he wants to go back home and he wants to go back to his father. And in many ways, I find that so just relevant to everything, just that we got so caught up in this, you could say worldliness kind of thing going on, that the people that are prepared and to receive it, they're the ones that kind of go, oh my goodness, you know, what's going on? But you've always been monitored. The home is always right behind you. So it's I that's what I got in this whole talk, this feeling of just, you know, I have missed something because I got so entranced by something else that when I wake up, it's I just want to be home, but I am already home, so to speak.
This I want to pick up on what you just said. It really struck me. This kind of way like a gaze, being in the father's gaze, right? And then when the child notices the father's gaze isn't there, it's in a different world, right? Like kind of this sense of where, like, I'm like, and I want to pick this up just in terms of this kind of sense of the mentor, who's really the mentor here, right? Like on some level, like a mentor maybe is something like the way a gaze gathers a world, because that's what a gaze does, isn't it? It's like attention, right? Like we have a tendency to think of attention as like, you know, a beam of light that just focuses on something, but it's actually, I don't think it's like that. It's like when you pay attention to something, it's more like the way that it's really the logos. It's like the way it's a quality of logos. The things it gathers and shows everything. Certain things go to the background. Certain things come to the foreground. So in some ways, it's just interesting to think about that. There's something like we can always ask, what is, in some sense, what is the gaze, right? That we are inside of, that we don't even maybe know to ask and look around and see if dad's watching, like, so to say, right? Because it's so true, right? If you think about it, it's like you are like so much of everyone here is if your face has been ripened in attention. Like it's like we're so like the way it went with my mom and my dad, and like the way they could pay attention and not, and they were attuned and not attuned. My teachers, it's like if it wasn't for all that, guy wouldn't make any fucking sense even to me, right? I'd have no me. So there is this kind of way in which, yeah, I guess our character is in some sense ripened in the gaze of it, in some kind of gaze. And there is a way in which, like, I guess in such a way that so that we can then attend to a world to ripen in, right? It's like the way that our, like, to ripen the world with our gaze can be an aspiration, right, for us. Mm-hmm. But this kind of quality of being in a gaze, right? Maybe it's something, there's something about this that, because I'm now starting to kind of feel this sense in which, well, one is like being mentored, I guess, this mentoree relationship in some sense isn't something I'm in or not. It's something I can find out I'm in, like, but without knowing it. In some sense, necessarily so. So this is, it's just like this. I'm just noticing what's happening for me is this deepening wonder. I feel present to wonder and more inspired with concealment. Less of a, like, it's an interesting relationship. I have less of a wanting everything to be revealed. And it's more like it's like I feel closer to what isn't revealed somehow, right? Through this as being the cool thing.
You
So
said the magical one.
I can go till 12:30. So we got about 10 more minutes of timelessness left.
When you say ripened, I remember John Vervaeke's this kind of like being, these three ends. It's nurturing, it's nurturing, and it's nourishing, all at the same time. And for me, that's what we are doing here, or trying to do, kind of like this enactment of Scholé, right? What then also, right, perhaps now, what I realized what also happens then is this kind of like what Dejanaro always points out, this measure of sufficiency that kind of like certainly comes. And I don't often, right, when you kind of like attune yourself to that, when sufficiency arises, when you say, I'm nourished now and I'm fine and I can leave and it's fine and it's okay. And I hope, and until next time, and until we gather the logos again, until we come again to our practice. And that also kind of like this, and that's then really, that's this deep letting go, I think, that Eckhart and the other mystics talked about. When from a standpoint of sufficiency, because then you can let go, and but it's still, you know you are nourished, you know you are deeply rooted and settled in the world, kind of like sheltered by that which we are trying to presence here, which cannot, right, as Plato says, it cannot be spoken or written of. It's like the Tao in that sense, right? The Tao that can be spoken and written of isn't the true Tao. That's kind of like, that's this thing that's present without being present.
It reminds me when we were talking earlier about, oh, the one is so great that it can even like empty out horror, but it even empties out beauty, right? Because like part of the concealment aspect, I like the word grace, because like you can see grace in movement, but you can never like re-articulate it to someone else. Like when you see grace, it's gone. And I guess that goes into like the idea of like flow. And another thought that I had was like, in terms of ripening and gaze, like that's the child. The child is being ripened by a gaze. And then I would think that the adult learns that it that he or she's only an adult because of that gaze that ripened him or her, and they turn around and do the same. And like somehow maybe the sage like realizes how to be both at the same time, like that interpenetration, how it's both what's being gazed and ripened while also gazing and ripening itself. And yeah.
Really glad that you brought it up, Guy, with like, because I also have the sense that there is something thing to pay attention to, like, and attention is really the like, let's say, the phenomena that is kind of for me, like it's in it's in a difference, or it differentiates itself from, like, let's say, the locus. So it's pretty known for, I don't know, cognitive psychology, that we only have one locus. So we can see something, and if we pay, like, if we like, let's say, if our locus rests on I don't know, some detail or some trait, right, it can like, things can happen that we do not notice. And in the same way, our name, right, is so strikingly so there can be like noise all around, and but it's our name that we are so familiar, like, and it really hits us. So when we hear it, we probably turn around. But attention, I feel, is also something like, it's something different. Like, we're holding attention, and that's what I think. And it's kind of, it's not a locus, so it's more like the locality of localities, in a sense that it, like, it kind of, it has this gathering aspect to it. And in this sense, I really think that the need, like, that also Daniel was pointing to in Parmenides. So the need is, in a sense, to, as I feel it or think it, in a sense, to articulate these thresholds that like, and respond to these thresholds, and like, this walking, like, or like, let's say, walking or circling around, like, in this in this space of attention, or in this locality of localities that we kind of hold. And and the artists, in a sense, and maybe the Greeks also, they know it, that there is this need, and we like that we share this need of articulating thresholds. Even like, it's like holding, circling, feeling, following, swelling, spilling. It's like, and this is kind of, for me, the practice that we are, at least as I see, that we are doing, like to attune ourselves to like articulating thresholds that kind of that we witness to in this attention that we hold, and that we are yeah. No.
Guy, you're muted.
Well, exemplified. I said I liked the way that you're using these hands, because I saw it in that moment. I saw that something sustained, right? It's like on one level, you could look at it like at these thresholds, this kind of place where opposites kind of come. And on one level, you could say it gets dull, as if there's something now present, a new whole that's present that wasn't there before. But in another way, you could say it's revealed, right? These kind of the sense of thresholds is also a limit, like just like a horizon, right, is a limit, right, but an infinite one only. All right. So the last thing I have here is it says do a round of takeaways. What are we taking away from this today? I'll go first. I'm just taking away a sense of, I think that there's something like trust. Yeah, some kind of trust, and precisely in what isn't disclosed to me right now, yet is somehow determinate that's actually like good.
I feel like that answered it, Guy, when I said why the purpose for the falling and the finding. And it's the trust. And the funny thing is that I remember saying the trust in my head, but I was just like, no, I don't, I'm not entirely sure. But then you said it, and then I felt that almost everybody agreed with it. That I just felt that this whole room agreed with it, that there is this trust. And in the sense that's like that is like going home and realizing going home, that is the trust that you are in the shelter itself, that this will all hold, whether you realize it or not, because you are in the trust, maybe rather than being trusted, but you are in the trust, and so I found that beautiful.
Finding yourself in the bonds of philosophical fellowship, which is what I found myself in that was just disclosed as you were speaking, Javier, was that I'm very grateful for having this, being in a relation with you all, and being able to do this. Yeah. Thank you very much.
For me, what I take away is like so what would I say, this this, it's a tenet in a sense with this limit that is but an infinite one. So I also found this really strikingly good said.
I guess what I would say about our time today is it's going back to the one, like there's something about it where when you actually like are in trust, um, like it's like what the sages talk about, like the world becomes new, like the snake sheds its skin, and there's just something beautiful about the fact that this just is never going to happen like this again, but it's always going to happen like this again if you live in trust.
And I take away nothing.
Boom. And I'll complete with the one is certainly absent from nothing and from everything. It is present without being present, except to those who are able to receive it and who are prepared for it, so as to become harmonious with it, and in a way, grasp it and touch it through their likeness to it. That is the power in themselves akin to what comes from it. Thank you, gentlemen. All right.
Goodbye, everyone.
Talk
Bye,
to you soon.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.